welcome to our Tuesday evening cook-along with Cam and Canning Street. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you very much to Cam for hosting us on your Facebook page this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to share this with your community. I hope that we can inspire some of you to get cooking a delicious plant-based meal this evening. Or if it's not this evening, maybe you're watching along and just getting some inspiration to cook another day. But hopefully you enjoy it and we inspire you to make a healthy, tasty, plant-based meal sometime soon. In case any of you, so those of you who are watching me, we're live on Cam and Canning Street's Facebook page and we're also live on New Norm's Facebook page. So I imagine some of you in New Norm know me well by now. And some of you in Cam and Canning Street are probably wondering, who is this chick and what's she doing on Cam's Facebook page? So for those of you who are wondering that, let me tell you. So my name's Norma and I founded New Norm about 3 years ago now. I have been friends with Cam and Katie since you opened your doors back in, 3 years ago. And previously, well, prior to last year, I guess, we would often cater events and workshops and things that you had going on in the studio, which was always an absolute pleasure to bring you some tasty breakfasts or energy bars or salads and things to the studio. I always absolutely loved doing it. And fueling you with some delicious plant-based food. But obviously in the past year, we've kind of not been able to do that for obvious reasons. So Katie and I thought this would be a nice way to bring you some tasty plant-based foods virtually. So you're gonna have to cook it yourself this time, but that might be even more rewarding because you've cooked it yourself, you've got the recipe under your belt, and you can enjoy it again and again and again, rather than just a one-time thing. So hopefully you'll enjoy and hopefully some of you will get involved. So that's why I'm here. In case you don't know anything about New Norm, then, so we used to cater some of Cam's events, but the core part of our business isn't really event catering, it's more about bringing food to your homes. So we produce plant-based, whole food, ready meals, if you like. We produce them, portion them up, flash freeze them into biodegradable containers. So, and then we deliver them around central Scotland, basically. So we deliver around central Scotland and you can get healthy, whole food, plant-based meals delivered to your door. So it's essentially, our mission really is to make plant-based eating easier. So it's all about fueling you with good food when you don't necessarily have time to cook for yourself. So that's what we do. If you're interested, check it out at newnorm.co.uk. We've got our full menu and list of services and everything in there, so check us out. Yeah, and that's the core part of the business. We've also in the last year been behind the scenes trying to get a plant-based meal planning and recipe platform live. So hopefully in the coming weeks, we'll get that launched and that will basically have loads of plant-based recipe inspiration. So there'll be a free section where you can just get lots of plant-based recipes, and there'll be a membership where you can get even more recipe inspiration, but also some plant-based meal plans that will kind of guide you through different nutritional goals, I suppose. So whether that's about eating a high protein plant-based diet, for example, or a low calorie diet, or about eating seasonally, or about eating zero waste, then we'll have all these different plans that can target all those different, or help you achieve those different goals, whatever they might be, as well as all these different recipes to choose from. So enough about me. Hopefully that gives you a bit of background for those of you who are wondering what I'm doing here. The core part of why we're here today is to cook. So, shall we get into it? Before we go any further, I'm just going to say if you can get your ovens on to 180, and if you can get a large saucepan, half full of water, and get that on to boil. So you want your saucepan to be big enough to fit some lasagna sheets in it. So yeah, you can see plenty of room to fit all the lasagna sheets in there. So a big pot of water, get it on to boil, and get your oven on to 180, and then we'll get cracking. So what we're going to do, first up we'll go through the ingredients that you'll need for today, and then I'm going to step by step walk you through, cook with you through the recipe. Please do ask questions as you go. If you're cooking along with me and you've got any questions, need me to slow down, speed up, which is probably never going to happen, slow down, repeat anything or anything like that, please just message in the comments and I will repeat or answer your questions or whatever it may be. So please chat to me. I get lonely here if you don't. Cool. So give me a chef's hat if you're cooking with me today, or give me a wave if you're just watching. And let's get going. So tonight we're going to be cooking a spinach and ricotta cannelloni. Plant-based obviously, so no actual ricotta, but we'll be using silken tofu instead. And actually it tastes so good, and it tastes just like the real deal. Like honestly, you won't miss the cheese. If you're a massive cheese lover and sort of think, oh, I'd quite like to try eating more plant-based, but I really struggle with the cheese, then this is actually a great recipe to try that, because I really don't think you'll miss it. Right, let's go to it. Let's go through the ingredients then. So, what you'll need for making this today, I am cooking for 2 people, but I would actually recommend that you double the ingredients and cook for 4 if you've got them, because especially if you're cooking for more than one of you, because why not? It takes just as much time and it lasts for 2 to 3 days in the fridge, so you might as well. So what you'll need, I've got 200 grams of fresh spinach here, 400 gram can of chopped tomatoes, a red onion, 2 cloves of garlic, half a teaspoon of black pepper, a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of coconut sugar, any sugar will do, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, about 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, a couple of tablespoons of panko breadcrumbs, 6 lasagna sheets, 150 grams of silken tofu, half a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar, a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, and a tablespoon of pine nuts. So, some swaps in case there's anything that you don't have there. Somebody asked about panko breadcrumbs in the event earlier. So that's really just to give it a bit of a crunch on the top. So if you don't have panko breadcrumbs, you could use other breadcrumbs, you could use nutritional yeast, you could even just use some like flaked almonds or something and sprinkle that on the top. It's really just to give it a bit of a crunch and change in texture, kind of to mimic the kind of crunch that you get of grilled cheese on the top of, you would normally cannelloni or lasagna or something. So, and also you can just leave it out, it's not particularly necessary. Other swaps. So the lasagna, that's the thing to note. I'm using dried lasagna here because it is doesn't have any egg in it normally. So check the lasagna sheets when you buy them, but generally speaking, dried lasagna won't have any egg in it. If you buy fresh, it likely will have egg in it. So that's why I'm using the dried stuff, which does obviously bring the problem of it's cannelloni, so we're going to be rolling it. But we will solve that problem by par cooking it, which is why you've got that pot of water on. I think that's it. If you've got any other questions about anything that you're missing or want to substitute, then just comment away. Let's get going. Lovely to have some of you here. We've got Amy, Claire, we've got Cam and Canning Street here with us, lovelies, and Beige. Thanks very much for joining, guys. And we've got a couple cookers there as well, so yay, let's do it. Right, first things first. We are going to move this out of the way without dropping it all. Trickiest part. We're going to prep our onion and our garlic. So we're just going to peel and dice our red onion and our 2 garlic cloves. And we're just going to saute them in a little bit of oil to begin with. Sometimes I feel like it's Groundhog Day. I feel like every cook along I start with. So we'll peel and dice an onion and garlic. It really is the basis of most good meals. If you learn one thing, then that's it. You can't go far without an onion in your fridge. Right, so we're just going to dice this onion. You can go quite fine or you can go quite chunky. It really doesn't matter too much. It's going to form the base of your tomato sauce. So if you like a bit of chunky onion, then that's absolutely fine. If you're cooking it for some fussy kids who don't like that, then I'd recommend maybe you dice it a bit finer. So what I just did there, and that's how you can get it a bit finer, is once you kind of chop down to the root of the onion, not quite hitting it, and then if you chop through horizontally as well, then when you finally slice this way, you'll get nice, small, diced pieces of onion. But if you're not worried about that, then you can just slice it down vertically and then horizontally. I'm kind of getting all my verticalies and horizontalies mixed up there because I don't really know how you can say vertically or horizontally when it comes to an onion. That's why we use video. My explanations aren't as important if you can see what I'm doing. So, first things first, now you should have 2 saucepans, well, 3 saucepans I suppose. You need the large saucepan for your lasagna sheets. You need a small saucepan that we're going to saute the onion and garlic in and put our chopped tomatoes in there as well. That's going to be our tomato sauce. And then we need a large frying pan, and that's going to be for making the spinach and ricotta part of the dish. So size them correctly because you'll be wilting 200 grams of fresh spinach in your large saucepan, so that one does need some room. Right, so drizzle of oil in your small saucepan, and then pop your, I'm just going to do a bit of jiggery pokery here so you can actually see the right saucepans. So into your small saucepan, a little bit of oil, and pop your onions in there, and we're just going to saute them. I'm currently wondering if my small saucepan is a little bit too small, but we'll see. And then we're going to add to that a couple of cloves of garlic. I'm going to use my Whizzy garlic crusher. That means I don't have to peel and just crush straight into it, which is a dream, but I'll go slow in case you need to do all the chopping and peeling yourself. So we're just going to saute that on a medium heat. Let your onion and your garlic start to soften and start to fill your kitchen with a delicious smell that will make everyone come running and say, is it dinner time yet? I am really looking forward to this one actually. I love it and haven't made it for a while. Right, so now we've got our onions and garlic on. We are going to check on this water, which is starting to bubble away there. You don't have to get it boiling vigorously before you add this. Before we do add the lasagna sheets, just add a drip of olive oil or any oil. That's just to stop your lasagna sheets from sticking together. So now we're just going to pop them into the water. You just want to make sure that they don't stick together. So you kind of don't want them sitting on top of each other too much, so just split them apart. That's what the olive oil will help to do as well. And let that come up to a bit more of a simmer, and that will also stop them from sticking together too much. And our onions and garlic are starting to soften a little bit there. Once they've softened a little bit more, a top tip when you're making a tomato sauce. I feel like tomato sauce is one of the simplest ingredients, simplest kind of sauces that you can make, but it's quite easy to get wrong. And I think a lot of the time you just kind of fry off your onions, garlic, whack a can of tomatoes in there, maybe some herbs, and that's it. Which you can make an okay tomato sauce doing that, sure. But what we're going to do here is, once we've sauteed off the onions and garlic, we're going to add a pinch of about half a teaspoon of coconut sugar. Any sugar can do. I just always use coconut sugar for everything because I like the taste of it, really. Half a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar and also a pinch of salt. I'm going to add all that to the onions whilst they're sauteing, caramelize them a little bit, and then add the chopped tomatoes. That will just make it a much more kind of rich and tasty tomato sauce, because it can be quite, canned tomatoes can be quite acidic, and if you don't add, even if you really don't like adding salt and sugar to things, just a pinch of salt and a pinch of sugar will really make the difference. So completely understand if you're trying to reduce your salt and sugar, and this will still have way, way, way less salt and sugar than any sort of processed jar of tomato sauce or bolognese sauce or anything like that would. So you'll still be massively reducing it versus a shop-bought tomato sauce, but it will just really lift the flavor. So if you don't normally do that, then I'd highly recommend it. If you don't want to add sugar, then you can just add a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon instead, which acts very similarly to sugar. Because it's got quite the sweetness from the spices. So I highly recommend that you give that a go. If you don't already, I'm sure there's many of you there that are seasoned cooks in the kitchen and already doing that. Right, so now that's kind of started to soften there, we're going to add our pinch of salt. Doesn't have to be much. Pinch of pepper. Pinch of sugar, which I can't get out. That's about half a teaspoon, that's a quarter of a teaspoon of sugar, sorry, I've got in there. And half a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. Just pop that in there. And that will fill your kitchen with a delicious smell. Or it's maybe not that delicious smell when you smell the vinegar, but it will fill the kitchen with a lovely smell and it will start to taste delicious very soon. I've just got new, anyone who watched on Sunday will already know my pan chat, but I've just got new pans and they're non-stick and they're wonderful. It's kind of made me realise how terrible my pans were before. But they're also purposely nice and white on the inside so you can see what's going on. I was thinking of you guys when I bought them. Right, so we're just going to let them caramelise a little bit more before we add the tomatoes to it. Meanwhile, just going to check in on our lasagna sheets and make sure they're not sticking together. So just get in there with a pair of tongs, separate them if they are. These are sort of starting to stick together a little bit, so just make sure they're not sitting on top of each other. See how these ones are starting to stick together, just try and separate them there. There we go. Perfect. All right, how are we doing? Keeping up? Any questions, then please do hit me up. This is actually a really good recipe for if you are worried about your iron levels. And this is a fantastic recipe for that because spinach, as you probably know, has quite a lot of iron in it. It's a dark leafy green. But a lot of the time, people are not actually deficient, are not actually they're consuming enough iron, but they're not absorbing enough iron. And in order to absorb iron, you need to, like vitamin C helps with your iron absorption. So there's lots of vitamin C in the tomatoes, lots of iron in the spinach, mix them together, boom, great meal for getting your iron levels up. So that's a nice added bonus. Right, you see our tomatoes are starting to look super tasty. Our onions, sorry. At this point we can add our tomatoes. Just pop them in. Phew, our pan is just big enough. Give them a stir around. If you want to add any herbs, then some oregano would be beautiful in here. I didn't put in the recipe, but that's more my oversight than anything else. So if you've got some dried oregano, then chuck it in. Just about half a teaspoon would be perfect. And then we're just going to turn the heat down on that and let it simmer. Right, meanwhile, we're going to get cooking with this silken tofu. So for those of you who are new to silken tofu, then get involved. It's got a lot going for it. I haven't cooked that much with silken tofu myself either, actually. And just lately I've started cooking with it more and experimenting, making omelettes with it, and love it. I love it as kind of like a creamy cheese substitute, so I'm going to definitely start playing with that a little bit more. So pop your silken tofu in a blender. Amy, is that true if you drink? Yes, so I've probably been preaching that to you as well. It is also true because it's a really bad habit of mine and of many people. If you drink caffeine or consume caffeine after you've eaten iron, in whatever form it might be, then you won't absorb it as well. Like you'll probably still absorb some of it, but it massively reduces the amount of iron you'll absorb. So again, you can be getting plenty iron into your diet, but you're not necessarily absorbing much of it if you're washing it down with caffeine. So it's a top tip if you think you're low in iron to stop washing down your meals with a cup of coffee or tea. I'm always on at my parents for that actually, because that's been like a family habit. Like the kettle goes on after you've had dinner and it's really bad. I've been telling them this for years and they still do it. Right, so silken tofu in your food processor. It's not that hard to blend, so if you don't have a food processor, you can actually just whisk it and you'll still get the same effect. Pop that on. and you'll see quickly that kind of turns to kind of like a creamy kind of pastiness. And then to that, you're going to add your 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast and just another pinch of salt. And also 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Ah, we've got a Norma watching. Welcome, Norma. I'm so pleased to have you here. It's such an uncommon name these days. I'm always delighted when I meet another Norma. Thanks for joining. So once you've added all that, just give it another whiz. Cameraman, could you pass me a spatula? Or just a spoon? I'm going to need to, you're going to need to probably scrape down the side of this food processor to get the nutritional yeast down off the sides and into the mixture. And then just give it another final whiz to bring all that together. It's not going to taste particularly good right now, so don't stress about that. Okay, perfect. Looks a bit weird, but that is what you're aiming for. Now, if we come back over to the cooker, just check in on our tomato sauce, which is looking pretty tasty, and see what's happening in this pan with our lasagna sheets. Perfect. Now, they're looking nice and floppy, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to take them off the heat now. So I don't know if you saw, but let me just pick another one up to show you. You want them nice and floppy like that because you're going to roll them, basically. So that's exactly how you want them. Turn the heat off, and then we're going to pop our tomato sauce over into a slower hob because that just needs to simmer now. And we're going to bring our large saucepan over onto our main heat here and toast our pine nuts. So a tablespoon of pine nuts, just pop them in, and we're just going to toast them. I have got a terrible habit of burning nuts whenever I try and toast them. So if I don't go back to these nuts in a couple minutes, then scream at me in the comments and tell me to save the nuts. Because, yeah, it's my biggest waste. I always waste nuts by doing it, and nuts are so expensive, it's such a pain. Okay, so pine nuts toasting, tomato sauce on the hob, simmering away. I'm just going to take the lasagna sheets out of the pan to stop them cooking, out of the water, and just pop them in a dish so they don't cook any further. You don't want them super floppy. Well, you want them pretty floppy, but you don't want them to start falling apart. You don't want to overcook them because they're yet to be cooked in the oven. Just grab them there. Try to not let them stick together again when they're sitting here waiting. We'll start rolling them pretty shortly, so they won't be waiting too long. Oh, broke one. No! There we go. Lovely. So set them to one side. We'll be using them imminently. Try to use some kitchen utensils rather than just your hands like I do. It's a sure way to get burnt. And check your pine nuts. Check they're not burning. And what now, what now, what now? Now, we're going to chop our spinach. That's what we're going to do. Sorry, temporarily lapse in brain power. Right, so you can just add your spinach and wilt it exactly as it is. I'm going to chop it down slightly just because if you chop it down, it means, so if you add your spinach like this and wilt it, you tend to have kind of, not stringy, but you've got quite long lengths of spinach once it's wilted, whereas if you chop it a little bit, it'll be kind of easier to eat because it'll be chopped down finely when it's within the cannelloni. You're not going to get a stringy stalk of spinach, which personally I don't mind too much, but probably preferred not to. So we're just going to chop it really roughly to avoid that. Smell the pine nuts. So So if you're cooking along with me, you'll know your pine nuts are done when you can smell them. And you can see they're lightly toasted and slightly changed color on the bottom there, but you don't want any more than that. So at this point, add your spinach, and you're just going to wilt that spinach in the pan. And then chop the other half. You can also use frozen blocks of spinach. I find actually really quite handy, because when you have if you buy a big bag of spinach from the supermarket, quite often before you get to the end of it, it's starting to wilt. So this is quite a good recipe for either using up a big bag of spinach that you're kind of out of ideas of what to do with, or it's just sort of on the turn and you don't want to be eating it in a salad anymore. You can absolutely wilt it down and it'll be perfect used in this. But if you don't have that big bag of spinach that's going to go to waste if you don't use it, you can also use frozen spinach. So you get those frozen cubes of spinach, which can actually be quite good for stuff when you need quite a lot of it. I'm all about maximizing the use of frozen veg, because it can be so useful and it's got all the same nutrients as fresh stuff. So I think frozen fruit and veg can get a bad rep, but actually it can be super useful and a great way to reduce your food waste. So I'm all for frozen fruit and veg. Right. How are our cook-alongers getting on? Those of you who are cooking with me, just holler if I'm going too fast or need me to repeat anything. All right. Just give that a little stir. Allow it to wilt down. And then once that's wilted, we're going to add our tofu mixture. I love the deep green color of spinach. It's just so satisfying. Just looks so healthy, doesn't it? And paired with the pine nuts, it's just such an awesome combination of flavors. Honestly, you're in for a treat tonight, guys. Look at that. Allow it to release some water before you add the tofu. What do you add to the tofu? So, Katie, it's 150 grams of silken tofu, 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, quarter teaspoon, of nutmeg, and a pinch of salt. That's it. That's it. Super easy. Unfortunately, anyone who's thinking, can you substitute the silken tofu for firm tofu? The answer is no. It just won't kind of whip the same. Right, so now your spinach is wilted. We're just going to add the tofu mixture. And yeah, if you don't want to get your blender out, silken tofu is fairly easy to break down to kind of creamy consistency with a whisk, so you can probably do it by hand. Quite often I will use the hard method rather than getting out the blender for some reason. I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with my blender. I'm sorry, blender. Exclusively love you. It's what an awful thing to say when I'm using it, isn't it? Sorry. I've also got a new blender before Christmas, and actually I really quite love this guy. It's so much better than my last one that was... Any of you who've been watching my cook-alongs for some time will know that the last one was really quite broken and not fit for purpose. So this one's a lot better. We love it. Right, so get your tofu in the pan with the spinach. And give that a good mix around. If it's quite dry, you might want to add a little bit of water just to kind of make sure it's a creamy consistency. But there should be a fair amount of liquid released from the spinach, so it should be quite nice and creamy. Look at that. Look at that. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So you don't need to particularly cook that because it's going to go in the oven to warm through. So you just want to mix it together, get it to that beautiful consistency, and then you can turn that off. Fabulous. And turn the tomato sauce off at that stage as well because it's looking good. All right. Let's just give it all a taste. That's tasty. You get a good kick of the nutmeg, actually. So I always think the nutmeg's really nice in bechamel sauces as well. I'm just going to add a little bit more salt to it, actually, which I think will bring out the cheesiness of the nutritional yeast. And actually, what would also be great in here, maybe a cameraman can oblige me by bringing it over, is a little dash of lemon juice. So if you've got a lemon or if you've got a bottle of lemon juice, then just add a little dash of that to it as well. That is because there's something about the combination of lemon with nutritional yeast that makes it cheesy. And actually, without the lemon, without that dash of lemon juice, the nutritional yeast doesn't really have that much of a cheesy flavor. So just a little dash. If you've got a fresh lemon, kind of half, just a little squeeze in there, and that will really bring out the sort of cheesy flavor from the nutritional yeast. Okay. Let's give that another wee taste. Oh, it was a bit screechy, sorry. Yep. That is so much better. Not that it was bad to begin with. And now let's taste our tomato sauce. Perfection. Yeah, like I say, just that tiny bit of sugar and caramelizing the onions with balsamic vinegar makes all the difference to that tomato sauce. So that is super tasty. Right, so at this point, get the dish that you're going to bake your cannelloni in and just spoon a couple of spoons of your tomato sauce into the base of the dish. You don't need an awful lot. It's just so when you roll up your cannelloni, it's not sitting on the bottom of the dish. So just like an inch of tomato sauce in the bottom there. And then set that to one side. And now what we're going to do is, just let me get this, clean the deck a little bit. You're going to get your slices of lasagna. Can you see everything here? Am I blocking the view? You get a spoonful of your cannelloni mixture, your spinach mixture. Pop it the length of your lasagna sheet. The width of your lasagna sheet. And basically roll it up in itself. Lovely. Then pop that on top of your tomato sauce. And then repeat for all 6. Can you see everything there? This is the most laborious part, but actually it's really not that difficult. I'm pretty clumsy and not the neatest cook in the world. I hate to admit that, but it's true. So if I can do this, then you can absolutely do it too. Okay. You can be as generous or as meager as you like with your fillings. Just kind of think about how many slices of lasagna, sheets of lasagna you've got, and try to make your filling kind of go across all of them. Just roll it up. And also judging the size of your dish to bake it in is kind of important. And you're probably thinking, you ain't done a very good job of that, Norms, which is what I'm thinking too. I trialed it in this dish and they all fitted in. I had managed to get 2 down the side last time I did it, but I must have made them a bit fatter. Oopsie. Let's see. You reckon I can get one down the side? Oh, a thin one maybe. Okay. So who has cooked with silken tofu before? like I say, I'm relatively new to it, but loving it. I've been trialing a few different recipes with it and really loving cooking with it. So I'd love to hear. Tote's going to fit 6 in here regardless. Yeah, I'd love to hear if you've got any silken tofu suggestions or anything that you would like to see us cook, actually. Anything that you missed, if trying to go plant-based, and if there's anything that you missed, then let me know and I'll try and do a wee plant-based version for you. Always enjoy experimenting in the kitchen and seeing what we can come up with. Okay, there we have it. We've just about kind of maybe almost fit it all in there. Could probably just have made them slightly thinner and they would have fit better. But hey ho, all good. Because now what we're going to do is cover it all in tomato sauce anyway. So now you just want to spoon on your remaining tomato sauce, and basically it's going to all cook down in this lovely sauce. Amy saying, never cooked with silken tofu, I think is what you're saying there. Excellent. You're not making it, you're going to try it later. Please do. Also, anyone who's cooking or is going to cook along later, please, please, please send me your photos. I absolutely love seeing what you've made. Now, this is not ideal that this little guy is peeking out the top here. He should really be covered in tomato sauce. So, don't do exactly as I do. Do as I say. Perfect. So, that's not looking too bad. Like I say, he should be a little bit more hidden, but I think it's okay. And then to top it off, I'm just going to add a sprinkle. I've got 2 tablespoons of panko breadcrumbs here. And that's really just to give it a bit of crunch at the end. There we have it. So, that just needs to go in the oven for 10 minutes. I'm not going to hang around with you chatting for 10 minutes, but you can pop it in and then hopefully it'll come out as a delicious looking spinach ricotta cannelloni. Hope you've enjoyed it, guys. I hope that you have a wonderful dinner, those of you who've been cooking along, and I hope that whoever is going to make it later really enjoys it, and please do share your photos. Those of you who've joined us from Carmen Canning Street's page, I hope you've enjoyed our cook along. If you do enjoy it, then come and give us a follow on newnorm.plantbased meal plans. We do a cook along every Monday evening at 6:30 normally. So if it's been of interest, then check us out and come and cook with us next week. Not next week, actually. That's a good point. Next week, we have got another special week coming, actually, because we're partnering with the Eco Larder next week. And we're going to go shopping at the Eco Larder in Morrison Street for our ingredients on Wednesday evening. I'll post the times on social media so you can find out more. And then on Thursday evening, we're going to, at 6:30, we're going to cook along and we're going to make a warm roasted cauliflower salad. And it's a zero-waste cauliflower salad because we're going to use every single part of the cauliflower. We're going to use the florets, we're going to use the stalk, and we're going to use the leaves. So it's a fantastic dish, not only because I love cauliflowers, but I feel like there's often so much of it wasted. I hate to see like half the thing go in the food waste bin, basically. So we'll solve those problems, and also it's a really good sort of salady dish to bridge the gap between wintry stews and summer salads. So if that sounds good, then join us on Thursday night at 6 o'clock, next Thursday, sorry, at 6 o'clock. We'll be making that live. So thanks very much, guys, and hopefully see some of you soon. Take care. Bye.